A Place to Stand On. Written by Marie Vibbert. Story excerpt read by James O. Barnes. Marie Vibbert's work has appeared in Analog, Asimov's, F and SF, and many other magazines. She's sold over 50 stories and has been translated into Vietnamese and Chinese. By day, she is a computer programmer at Case Western Reserve University. This story originally appeared in Analog Science Fiction and Fact in January of 2019. It was an AnLab Reader's Choice finalist. A Place to Stand On. Hortensia inched along a beam 50 meters over the surface of Venus. Her safety harness clipped to 2 different guide ropes. The surface beneath her shook and bucked with the wind. It was cool, barely 20 degrees Celsius, as the sun painted the western horizon with the first gilding of daybreak. The clouds of Venus were a surface under her, a choppy sea of cotton, lit now and again with flashes of lightning in the deeps. A long way to fall. Her mother would say, anything over 30 meters and you're dead, so why worry? Her mother was a climber, leading tourists up El Potrero Chico on weekends. She'd been proud when Hortensia climbed, even when she climbed badly, because parents always want their kids to share their interest. Space she did not approve of. There's no reason to climb so high that you can't come home for the weekend. Hortensia shouted to be heard over the wind on her suit mic. Coming into position near Pylon 3. There wasn't much to Nueva Tenochtitlan right now. Just the beginning of a platform and the pylons mooring her to the balloon. Like its namesake, a city built where no solid land had been. Construction lights dotted the spindly structure, making it glitter in the cobwebs of mist. Across the steel and rope lattice, she saw Julio making his way to the section opposite hers. They worked in synchronicity, balancing every step, she and Julio and Nora, spaced out around Eduardo's crane and the nest of building materials at the center. Hortensia carefully transferred first one and then another safety clip to the hold she'd welded the day before. Secure. She relaxed. It was time to start another section of the city that would someday be her home. Material incoming. Eduardo's voice broke from her earpiece. Always a little too loud. Maybe she shouldn't shout so much either. She leaned back and raised her hands to catch and guide the piece of fabricated hull Eduardo lowered to her. She could see him far above, strapped in the spindly crane. The Mexican flag snapped smartly in the wind behind him. Eduardo raised a hand, and then his voice came over the radio. Looking beautiful. Let me know if I need to ease up. This little thing? Hortensia let herself feel a little airless to avoid gasping. I got it. Eduardo laughed. Well, hurry up and staple her down. I want to get off this thing before it falls apart. Hortensia lowered the welding shield over her visor. It hasn't fallen apart yet, you big chicken. The radio crackled. The mission commander, Juana Santiago, spoke. She barely used the main channel. It had to be bad news. All work crews, back to Aerostat now. Hortensia kept welding. I just started. This thing will rip off We're losing altitude. All work crews back. Move it. Hortensia's heart froze. She looked down at the unchanged clouds. Are you sure? There's a leak in the primary balloon. Reinflation control isn't responding. We're going to disconnect the gantry so the platform doesn't drag the aerostat down with it. Whoa, wait, Eduardo said. What about the chopper? Get someone up there with a can of spray sealant. Chopper's out of gas. Supply ship isn't due for 2 weeks. Look, guys, I don't want this any more than you do, but your lives are more important than the mission. We can start over again. Their first platform had failed when the rigging came loose. A month of work. It had hurt, but this, 8 months of work stretched out around her. How would they start again if they lost the balloon? It was the backup balloon, their only backup balloon, which replaced the one lost when it pulled free. We can't start over, Hortensia said. There was silence. No one disagreed, but no one wanted to agree. I'll pull the section back, Eduardo said. Get out of there. No, Hortensia said. Control. We can climb. There was a pause. How much time do we have? Juana asked someone. The answer was off mic. Hortensia did a temporary weld, a few dots to hold the piece there for as long as it could, and secured her equipment. Juana said, It'll take you an hour to get up there, and we barely have that. Hortensia took the barely have that as a go-ahead and unclipped her safety line. Eduardo, can you get the sealant to me from the crane? I'm climbing this tether. Every meter we sink, the weather's going to get worse, Juana said. Hortensia fastened her safety clips to the nearest balloon tether. She climbed up what would someday be a wall, and then there was nothing above her but the cable stretching about 12 meters to the balloon. She wrapped her legs around it and started climbing hand over hand. Her welding gloves slipped, but she couldn't go barehanded without shredding her palms, so they'd have to do. A gasping voice came over the radio. I've got the sealant. I'm taking it to Eduardo. Eduardo said, Thanks, Julio. I'm retracting the arm. Juana said, I take it she's already climbing? Yup, said Eduardo. Juana groaned. We don't know exactly where the leak is, just what section. I've got this, Hortensia said. She kept climbing, trusting the rest of the crew to come around because it would be easier than stopping her. That was how she'd gotten her family to accept her going into space. After a brief pause, Juana said, You have half an hour. If you take longer than that, we pull everyone else in and leave you out there. Hortensia was sweating heavily. She kept her eyes on her hands and her mind on getting the next grip and hauling herself up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Resettle her hold with her feet, reach, and pull. The balloon was 15 meters up. She'd done longer climbs back home in Hidalgo. She could imagine the limestone cliffs, the blue sky, the sudden gutless feeling when an anchor popped free, the scatter of stones that heralded a fall. She'd done 20 meters many times, not a rope the whole way, but still. There was a section of her regular trail with an 11-meter rope climb. This would not even be twice that. Then, how much further? The leak wouldn't be right where she arrived on the balloon. Unless fate was feeling uncharacteristically kind. She'd never climbed on a balloon, but she was sure it wasn't hard. It would be like the top of a mountain, her mother's favorite place, walking on top of the world. Hortensia, this isn't going to be like climbing a mountain, Juana said, as if reading her thoughts. It's flexible and moving. Are you sure you can do this? You can still make it back if you slide down now. The cable gave a particularly hard buck. Hortensia tried not to think about her first fall from a faulty anchor made by her own mother. Not that she blamed her, but oh, how it hung between them when she said she was leaving. Maybe for good. It was an unspoken question weighting the air. Their last climb together had been slow, the silence broken only by the relentless tapping of hammers as they both sank more anchors than necessary. Hortensia's left hand slipped, and the welding glove rotated nearly halfway around. She locked her knees against the rope and gave herself a second to shake it back. Her hand rejoiced at the rest, but felt worse starting again. That was always the way. Get the net, Eduardo said. Nora, Julio, come on, we need something under her. This reminded Hortensia that there was, in fact, nothing under her. And as she ascended, she was also going outward from the platform below. She looked up at the balloon. It was a taut, sandstone yellow torus. It looked no closer than it had on the platform. At least it didn't look less inflated. She turned her eyes back to her hands. She could trust her hands and her arms. Though they were sweating and trembling, she trusted them. Her co-workers in Venus, not so much. This has been the first few pages of A Place to Stand On by Marie Vibbert. Story excerpt read by James O. Barnes. The full text of this story can be found online at www.analogSF.com/assets/6/6/Vibbert_art.pdf. Read more stories at marievibbert.com. MarieVibbert.com, or follow her at @MarieAsie on Twitter.